My name's Joe Balistreri, and I first learned I had hepatitis B way back in 1978. And then in around 1998, I learned I was co-infected with hepatitis delta. And that's what my clinical trial was about, was a cure for hepatitis delta. My doctors never mentioned clinical trials, even when I was told that hepatitis delta had no cure or treatment. I knew about clinical trials. They were in the news or in movies or wherever. When I realized that hepatitis delta had no cures or treatment, I decided to look on my own for clinical trials. I thought that it might take decades for treatments to come around, and I didn't want to wait 20 years. So I found the trial on my own. So I had lots of questions. The main trial doctor, he responded to me right away in an email, and then we talked on the phone, and he answered a lot of my questions. And when I did the search, in the clinical trial search, you can see the protocol. The protocol basically explains the trial and what the schedule is, what the patient's obligations are. It explains a lot, but I still needed to talk to the doctor one-on-one to understand everything. I was in 3 phases, and I had to be qualified for each of the 3 phases. So there was a period of sometimes months in between the phases. But when I was actively in the trial, there was a lot of travel back and forth. And over the course of 6 years in the 3 phases, I traveled to DC and Maryland over 70 times. While I was at the NIH in Maryland, I'd probably have to fast. I'd have to do up to 20 blood tests before breakfast. One thing that's tough when you're in a trial and you're away from home is that, like in my case, I pretty much went to DC by myself, and that's really tough. When you're doing research, don't be afraid to ask difficult questions of your doctors, or if you're actually talking to someone about a trial. Patients have a right to ask questions and have them answered. Remember that if you do agree to be involved in a clinical trial, patients always have the right to leave at any time if they find it, for whatever reason, their life circumstances change or they're just finding it too difficult. And of course, if you're on a trial drug, you really need to communicate whenever you're having issues. One piece of advice I always give out is if you have chronic hepatitis B, please get tested for hepatitis delta. That's very, very important to know. The Hepatitis B Foundation was really a wonderful source of support and still is. I actually was able to talk to one of the doctors that's involved with the Hepatitis B Foundation, share with him my experience, my health condition, my lab tests, and get feedback from him. That was really helpful. It was like, while he couldn't prescribe anything, he could give me his observations. And so it was like getting a second opinion. I really valued that.